Welcome back. In studio with us this morning are members of the JUNT Unions negotiation team. We have with us the president of the Public Service Union, Mr. Dean Flowers. Good morning.
Good morning.
And he's joined by the president of the Association of Public Service Senior Managers, the APSSM, retired Chief Magistrate Sharon Fraser. Good morning.
Good morning.
So, we're discussing the latest developments with the union in its negotiation with the government of Belize. And while we've been reporting widely on the acceptance of the 4.5% salary adjustment, we need to find out from you guys what are the other details that come along with this acceptance of the latest proposal from the Brazilian administration. Let's start with you, Ms. Fraser.
Okay, so, and good morning.
Good morning.
So the second proposal, I have to go back to the second proposal, was 4% salary adjustment effective the 1st of October 2025, and the remaining 4.5% was to be received over the next 2 years, the following 2 years. So 4.5% would have been, the 8.5% would have been in 3 years. Also, there was the unfreezing of 2 frozen increments. The first one would have been received in the 1st of April 2026, and the next one 1st of April 2027. But conditional to us getting that is the pension reform, that we had to agree to pension reform starting the 1st of October 2025. That would have involved the new entrants entering into the public service, them having to contribute to their pension, and the extension of the age of retirement from 55 to 60. Of course, you all know we did not accept that. Yes. So a third proposal came, and that proposal, no, the first payment was bumped up another half to 4.5%, and the next 4, the remaining 4, would have been paid, and still 1st of October 2025, and the next 4 would have been now paid October 2026. So we now had specific dates. The increments would have remained the same, but what is a plus and a win to us would have been the fact that we managed to get pension reform off of that letter. Oh. So that conditional subject to that was there would have meant that that wasn't there anymore. It's not that the pension reform is still not going to happen, just that no, officially it was not tied to the salary adjustment. So for us it was okay. We need to give it serious consideration, because if we didn't, there was a next step. And that next step would have been arbitration. And then we wouldn't have any control. Absolutely not. So it was to put this to membership for them to consider, okay, are you prepared to accept what is here? Which in my mind was a good deal, given where we moved. We moved from 3 and 5.5 over 3 years, subject to pension reform, to 4.5 and 4, without having to worry, at least in the front of our minds, about pension.
Go back for a second there and flesh out the idea of this could have gone to arbitration and you'd have lost control of the situation. Expand on that for the benefit of our viewers.
Okay, so when it comes to industrial relations, you're allowed to negotiate. But when it is you reach an impasse, we would have had 3 offers that would have come on the table. So that after that, it could have been that government is saying, okay, fine, we have reached a point where we are not agreeing, and then the matter would have been turned over to the Minister of Labor. And the next step is arbitration, a tribunal, an arbitration tribunal. At that stage, an arbiter or TORs are in fact appointed, and all control is out of the hands of the parties at this point. So while it is, they would hear from us, hear from government, and government will come with all their figures of why it is they can't take, why they can't give it, why, all the why is not. At the end of the day, the arbitrator would have made a decision, and the decision is final. It also meant that we could have ended up with less than what we actually have on the table now, yes, because there was no guarantee that an arbiter would have given us what is there now. It could have been less. And we had no control, and the decision is final. You can't go back and negotiate then, once it goes into the hands of the arbitrator.
Let me move over now to Brother Dean, and the fact that if the Minister of Labor were to have intervened and established the arbitration tribunal, on the face of it, it would have been a conflict of interest. Expand on that part for me as well.
Yeah, definitely it would have been, and it is something that I hope that future amendments to the Trade Dispute Act can address. In essence, the Minister of Labor sits in cabinet, so he has collective responsibility whether he supports cabinet's position or not. So if you invoke a tribunal, he gets to appoint the members of that tribunal. We get to nominate one depending on the composition, but ultimately the ball is in his court, and he determines who sits there, and he gives them instruction, albeit there's this facade that I'm be an independent tribunal. I think that if the CWU situation, what I got from the CWU situation is that it's obvious. It's difficult to get an independent tribunal in place given the fact that the minister appoints, and so most of the people would be
loyal or
pro-government.
Influenced by.
So under no circumstances would the unions have been looked at favorably had that tribunal been set up. And as Sister Sharon says, the law provides for the decision to be final and binding, albeit the people with the money, and I want to speak specifically to Port of Belize Limited, would have demonstrated to us that nothing is binding, that is final and binding if it is that you have money and you can challenge the system because they did not honor the ruling of that tribunal. Now, would we have been that type of rogue type of organization? I don't know. The membership would have had to decide that. But we felt that rather than put ourselves in this disadvantageous position of having the Minister of Labor and his appointees decide ultimately how this negotiation would have gone, which would have, again, could have stirred up something much bigger. Because I had made it clear from day one. I was prepared to go all the way. I would never, you see, I keep reminding my members that we have to learn. And 2021 teach me something very important. That if you're going to declare a trade dispute, then you have to be prepared to go all the way. And like I said, if that meant that we would have had to reach a point of civil unrest, then so be it.
Do you believe that your backs were against the wall, though, in the case of the tribunal being the next step? Yeah,
in the sense of settling things in a civil manner, we would have been against the wall.
Yeah.
We would have to really up the ante. And like I said, and that's why I said to my members, you will make the decision whether or not we go to we declare a trade dispute, because for me this is serious business. This is, for me, it became bigger than the 8.5%, especially based on all the revelations that started coming out.
And I think that's where the public is right now, because you're saying, President Dean, that it's bigger than the 8.5%. But for the general public, they feel that, all right, well, it has been settled now. You guys got what you asked for. You got even more when you think of the removal of the pension reform. And so they're thinking that, all right, it's done. All things are calm again. What do you say to them?
Absolutely not. I think that what this round of negotiation demonstrated to me is that we're operating in a vicious cycle. Every union leader that came before me found themselves in this very situation, begging, not necessarily negotiating, begging for an adjustment for workers who provide public service. And what is clear is that as the economy is growing, there's only one set of people who is benefiting. And those are what we refer to, of course, as the oligarchs in this society and the politicians. Wealth is not trickling down to the workers and to the wider citizenry. And so there has been significant growth in revenue, but also significant growth in expenditure. And nobody is checking, nobody is following the money. Not the Auditor General, and certainly not the Belizean populace. And so what we recognize is that there is a need, a great urgent need for us to address the systemic issues that is creating all these leakages into the hands of a few Belizeans and multinational companies or expatriates that are operating in Belize. And so what we have decided as a joint union is that our focus must now be on these governance issues. Our focus must be on holding these oversight bodies accountable. We have to hold these oversight bodies accountable, and we have to push for the enforcement of legislation that already exists, and the revision or amendment to legislation to hold people accountable who are not doing their work. People have been calling for UNCAP. We all know that the government signed on to the convention, and along with that will now come the adoption of several pieces of legislation to ensure that we combat corruption, which seems to be the norm in Belize, and especially where our elected officials are concerned. We have some very beautiful pieces of legislation, but nobody is enforcing them, and nobody is being held accountable to enforce them. And so that's where our fight will go now.
So then how do you express that to the public, to have them continue with this with you guys? Because as I mentioned, for the most part, the public is thinking, you got the 8.5, the unions are settling this matter now. And also, are you getting the buy-in from the entire union to continue this fight now? Because maybe they as well are also feeling that, all right, we got what we wanted.
No, it's funny because some of the challenges that we had in terms of getting buy-in for this last proposal was that members were concerned about the fact that also if we accept this, that means that all the governance issues, all the other issues will not be dealt with. I can tell you that that is one of the biggest issues that came out of the membership for BNTU. The president cannot be here today, but I know she had to fight as it relates to those coming just from her members, so I can only imagine what the wider public is saying. But it's not that we have not been addressing these governance issues, even from the joint union perspective, that there are some of these issues that are under the proposed CBA that we're supposed to sign the framework for. So it's not that the fight actually just begins.
Yeah.
This 8.5 was just a very short-term request, demand, however you want to describe it, to government, and we should have already gone into our CBA, and hopefully it will not last as long as the previous one, setting proper guidelines. But in that CBA is not just about money, it's all about systems, putting things in place to make the system, all of us accountable.
Yeah.
Let me ask this then, and I take your point and I respect the fact that it's not all about money, but my question has to do with money nonetheless. Because at this point, the masses of Belizean people, because the idea has been introduced that we want to go from $5 an hour to $6 an hour, that is something that could potentially benefit all Belizeans who are making a minimum wage of only $5 at this point. So my question has to do with where are we with the push towards a $6 minimum wage?
Brother Dean at every meeting asked about the $6. And in fact, when he first raised it, he's here, but I need to say this because when he first raised the issue of the $6, which would have affected every worker, he was told, but that is our manifesto plan, promise? How are you trying to steal our manifesto plan? that was the initial response. We don't promise that, so how come now you're coming with that? But he was bringing it in a different light, not to steal anything from 2.0. It was, what people don't realize is that you have public officers who are making minimum wage.
Yeah.
And I am thinking how hard it is for a number of public officers who not dead at bottom and their survival. We are public officers are one payday away from poverty. You have public officers retiring into poverty. They're struggling, and I'm thinking, my God, when I heard Dean talk about we have public officers at that point making $3.30 and then move to $5, and I'm saying, my God, how then they survive in this climate?
Here's a fundamental truth, if I may. There's a difference between a promise and a demand, right? Because a manifesto is a promise. A promise is a comfort to a fool, right? We've seen administrations come and go, half of the thing when they pledge, not get done, right? But a demand is where I am saying, this is what I want, based on what I believe or I know I deserve. That's to me what the fundamental difference is. So when you're approaching and saying, okay, fine, it might be there as 2.0, but you have public officers who are well below this particular threshold and we're demanding, we're clamoring that this be done, that's a whole different approach to the same issue.
And that's why we've said to the government, this matter will have to be addressed in our upcoming CBA. It cannot be. It cannot be that we will continue to ensure that those who push paper are highly compensated, but those who are responsible for food security, and I speak to the laborers in the Ministry of Agriculture, who have to push all these pilot products with the goat, the sheep, the tilapia, the different vegetables, different grades of banana. It cannot be that these people are responsible for our food security and earning the bare minimum. It cannot be that the people who are responsible to run the pilots for the chicken, the pigs, the cows, responsible again for food security, those who are responsible for our health and safety, the domestics in the hospital who are handling red waste, who are getting pricked with needles. It's really, I don't know how a government can have any conscience to not understand what we're saying when we're saying these people provide valuable public service. Public service that keeps you all alive, and you look down at them and you say to them they're only worth $5. The heavy duty operators who they keep the roadside clean in the Ministry of Infrastructure and Development. It's for any leader to boast about $5 or $6 minimum wage shows me that that leader has no love for his people, because the reality is, there's this saying that says, you want things to change immediately, put politicians per minimum wage. Look how quickly the system changed. And so none of them can tell me they have any love for the Belizean people, or that they have any love for public sector workers who are earning those pittance, which they want. It seems that they want to throw a party whenever you reach $6. It would seem they want to throw a party. And I'm saying to them, we have one another serious round of blows that I will be prepared for in the upcoming CBA, because no public officer should ever be forced to earn those type of salaries that category of workers that I spoke to. And so in the CBA, we will have to look at establishing standards for the public service. And that's why we're saying this nonsense of politicians being given this free rein to just flood the public service with workers rather than going through the proper channel of the Public Service Commission to ensure that we're getting the best people and paying them properly have to stop. And if this administration does not want to correct that, then they have no interest in improving this country.
Well, but let's be real, Dean. I don't know that any administration, based on the way how politics operates in this country, is serious about changing that. Because we all know the game. Politicians bring their supporters and put them in a sports council. They put them all over the place. So you have all of these open vote workers who at a certain point in time would want to formally assimilate into the public service, but they were not properly vetted. They did not go through the processes that would legitimize their employment where that is concerned.
And that's why what I recognize that we have to do as union, what you all have to do as media, we have to change the narrative. We have to really start coining these conversations so that the average man on the street know exactly what's happening. Because I think we're speaking it and we're trying our best to explain it, but I'm seeing that people are not understanding that that is not the way. That we can't continue like this. We cannot continue whereby you're concerned about your son and your daughter getting a scholarship and you're not concerned about my son and my daughter getting a scholarship, and then the Minister of Education, and I'm not casting any aspersion on this current Minister of Education, just facilitate you because you don't mean a loyal PUP or a loyal UDP. There has to be fair opportunities for us all, enabling environment. And so you're right, no government, none, and we've seen some of the worst governments over the last 23 years, or the last 28 years, in my humble view. None of them has taken the necessary steps to try to cure these type of bad governance. And will it happen? Trust me, it will happen one day. Will I see it? I don't know, but I'm hoping that my stance against these things will inspire the next generation of unionists, will inspire my children, your children, my grandchildren to say, no man, we have to demand better. And we can demand better, we just have to be prepared to get out, get the hell out of our comfort zone. Get the hell out of our comfort zone.
One of the things that I feel so inclined to highlight right now, and perhaps it's because of the generation that I come from, I'm much younger, sitting on this couch here, but for me, I can't help but acknowledge the roles that the unions are playing right now, especially when we look at how poor our opposition is operating. And I think that this is something that the public needs to acknowledge as well, because you've been able to successfully accept some demands that were placed forward to the government, while still acknowledging that this isn't a fight against the current administration, it's a fight against governance in general and the flaws that are within the government system here. Do you feel that that in some ways you're kind of acting as the opposition because of what is taking place?
Of course, every day. Right? And I think that it's an unfortunate burden that are placed on us. We have not run for any elections.
It's the same thing I say about the media as the fourth estate, right? We never sign up to be no elected opposition.
I always think about the fact that every time it's Jews have to be bringing out something which the opposition should be doing, and it's not that we have any role, any issue pointing out the systematic flaws, but that you're so busy trying to fight for governance issue that you want to tend to, it might be that you overlook what it is you're supposed to be fighting for your members, what you're mandated to do. I never run for no politics, but I cannot ignore the governance issues that exist, because ultimately it affects all of us as citizens of this country, not just as public sector workers, but as citizens. And you can't, in some cases, you can't separate the two. So if it is we're able to fix some of the governance issues, it will benefit us from the public sector. I know, for example, the Prime Minister would have said how much it's going to cost their government for this salary adjustment. And I've said to him, respectfully, we'll help to find the money.
Yeah.
So we have not just been sitting down to say, oh well, give away raise and give away adjustment, give away raise, give away. No, we have not done that. From the previous administration, we have gone, public sector workers have gone looking for the money to cover our own adjustments. So we've gone in. We are not just sitting down. I need to emphasize the fact that we have sat a part of the cost savings committee, the revenue enhancement committee, in order to assist. Although we didn't promise the people of Belize we are going to do this and we are going to do that. Brother Dean always talk about the 1.0, that there are so many promises in there. So he can't move to 2.0 because he's still on 1.0.
Yeah. A lot of unfulfilled aspects of it.
If I could add to Sister Fraser's comments on the matter of the opposition and our role, I think that while yes, there's the, as they would say, the loyal or royal opposition, I think that as citizens, we all have a role to play. This is a participatory democracy. And I will not leave my future or the future of my children and hopefully grandchildren one day, hope my daughter not hear me, into the hands of any opposition. We all have an active role to play, and that's why part of the reform process that we need, Belizeans, is whistleblowers as legislation. We all have a right to whistleblow any corrupt act, any abuse of public resources, any threat to public health. We have a moral, we're duty bound to whistleblow. And I am challenging the Minister of Good Governance, bring back the whistleblower legislation out of that House committee where it's been seated for the last 3 years. And I'm saying we need to get rid of these nonsensical non-disclosure agreement that they have people signing every time they put you on a board or on a committee. We have to have an open and transparent government. We need to amend that Companies Registry Act so that we can look at beneficial ownership, so that we can tackle the conflict of interest that exists with elected representatives giving themselves contract under the guise of shell companies. These people are fleecing this country, and it will go bad for us in 10 years' time. We will be off the cliff again. We need to know who they evade taxes, Isani. These people are evading millions of dollars in taxes with these shell companies that they're hiding behind. Some of these multinationals and foreigners that are investing in this country, the concessions and the tax breaks are too excessive. And I would have heard the Minister of State and the Ministry of Finance speak about the 200 million with I think it's what's the key? The
Chapo.
Key Chapo. And he would say I want to challenge him. He said something like this. He said, well, it's tax neutral. What the hell do you mean by tax neutral, my brother? It cannot be tax neutral when I could tell Beltrade, come on this couch and explain the analysis that he speaks of in terms of the investment that will come in versus what we will get. All that we will get is poverty wages while they enjoy tax breaks even before they put one shovel in at the ground to when the damn hurricane come and destroy the damn place and they left. It is shameful when you hear your leaders they talk about this, they're like, yo, fleece this country. Why? Because it for them bread butter on both sides. But the average man is supposed to live this type of really in life, this are life and indignity as far as I'm concerned, the way how our politicians think about us in terms of the type of wages that they think we should be earning, which they themselves would never want to earn. So governance issues, because we have to address the leakages in the system, and it's not leakages by anybody where they come in, it's the very leakages by the people that is being created by the very people that we elect. And so those are the things that for me is in my vision. Whistleblowers legislation, get it introduced, get the Companies Act amended so that we can demystify these politicians who are hiding behind shell companies both locally and internationally, and address the issue of taxes and tax evasion. Because if you think borrow $1 million a day if you pay salaries, I can say to the Belizean people that we're losing more than that per day in tax evasion. We're losing millions of dollars, and the government knows it, and the Auditor General can't even quantify it. Can't even quantify it.
Of course, we continue to follow, and as these developments further reveal themselves, we will be keeping up with the work that is being done through the joint unions. Thank you guys so much for joining us, and we wish you guys all the best.
Thank you.
Alrighty, we take a quick break, but don't go anywhere, because when we come back, it's all about Quartz Optical celebrating 30 years of clear vision.